Welcome to Comics Relics. I'm Ray Mescalado, and this is my unhauling video. There are lots of videos about new acquisitions, about buying new comics, and this one is about letting go. Let me explain. A lot of people who collect comics begin at a young age, collect and keep collecting, and their collection grows over the years. I've seen people my age, I'm in my mid-50s, with rooms filled with long boxes and bookshelves, and it is very, very impressive. But that's not the way I collected, even when I was young. Starting when I went to college in my teens and into my 20s and 30s, I moved around a lot. I attended 5 different colleges over that time. And when I moved, I kept my comics collection down to one short box and a long plastic milk crate of graphic novels and trade paperback collections. And I think it also helped that by the time I went to college, I foolishly believed I had quote-unquote outgrown superhero comics. It was a lot easier to keep a small collection of indies and alternatives and BDs than like long runs of Justice League or anything else. So yeah, one short box, one plastic milk crate, and that was it. However, that did not mean I stopped buying comics. When I was still a comic book reader and collecting, because there were times when I stopped, I always bought a lot of comics. But I would just get rid of them when the time came to relocate. Moving to another school or another state or another coast meant that I had to look at my collection, decide what mattered the most to me, and get rid of the rest. Sometimes I would sell it to a comic shop where I wouldn't get that much in return. Sometimes I would just give it to friends. Now, as I got older, the size of what I kept grew. One short box turned into 2. I added a small square milk crate with the long one that I had. But still, it was a case of comic book binging and purging. And I have to admit, I was proud to be that disciplined. Not disciplined enough to stop buying comics, mind you, but at least disciplined enough to purge when it was necessary. Now, as I approached my 40s, I settled down a long while. I had my daughter, and up until this summer, we lived in the same house for 16 years. I acquired a lot of comics at that time, and every once in a while I'd do small purges, but not nearly as much as before. At the end of this summer, I no longer lived in that house. That in itself is a long story I won't get into here. But if all goes to plan, I'll also be leaving this state by the summer of 2025. So I'm really excited about that. It will be another phase of my life, hopefully. And so the instinct to purge my comics collection is quite strong again. I think ideally I'd like 2 or 3 short boxes of floppies to take with me, and about a medium-sized bookshelf of hardcovers and other collections. Somewhere between 100 and 120, I'm thinking. That'll make a good shelf. Which my 20-year-old self would still think is too much, but I just tell that 20-year-old self to shut up. That said, 16 years was a lot of time to just keep collecting. And I have at least double or triple the amount of floppies, and probably triple the amount of collected editions, and now I need to get rid of them. And once again, as a result, I realize that while buying a comic book, whether it's a floppy or a trade paperback or an omnibus, is easy as long as you have the money and the desire to own it. But getting rid of a book requires a little more self-interrogation at least. I find myself asking, why did I buy this? Then I ask myself, did I ever read it? Because, sometimes you get a comic and you don't get around to reading it just yet. Then I ask myself, will I ever read it or reread it in the future? Because if I'm not going to go back to it, why am I still holding on to it? And because we're in the modern age, I also ask myself, would I be fine with this comic if it was just digital? And I don't mean just owning it digitally. There are so many other ways to read online. I love Hoopla, there's Marvel Unlimited, there's DC Infinite, that if you just like a comic, there really is no need to take it with you when you can always connect to the internet. The trickiest question I have to ask myself, though, is does this comic have any significance for me personally? And what I realize is that personal significance is a lot more complex than it seems and a lot less practical. For instance, I love Walt Simonson and Archie Goodwin's Manhunter. I own it in 5 different formats. I have it in a floppy, I have it in a graphic album format, I have it in a comic size format trade, I have the deluxe, and I quite proudly own the artist edition. Practically speaking, I only need one version. I'm not going to let go of any of them. And if you're a comic collector, I think you know that impulse as much as I do. I have multiple copies of other books as well, such as The Hunting Party by Pierre Christin and Enki Bilal, or Frank Miller and Bill Sankovich's Electra Assassin. And another quirk of my collecting life is that I have bought and got rid of and rebought the entire Legion of Superheroes Baxter run, Volume 3, 3 times in my life. Got rid of it in high school because I was too adult for comics. Got it again at some point, I think when I was living in California. Got rid of it again because I was leaving California. And then a few years back, I just needed it one more time and I got a complete run all over again thanks to eBay. It's kind of weird, but I'm definitely not going to get rid of these versions now. And I have Bilal books in French. I've never read completely because my French isn't that great. It's good, it's not great. And it's come with me everywhere since I first received it as a gift as a teenager and will stay with me till the day I die. And practically speaking, I could get rid of it because I'm not reading it that often, but I do look through it. I do love it on my shelf. It's got a lot of history with me, and it's one of the comics that have been with me the longest, certainly. So more than anything else, the comics and graphic novels I'm going to keep will be because of that aura, I guess. That totemic value which is deeply personal and often irrational. Sometimes it's all about the thrill of the chase and the passion of collecting. That's why I'm probably going to keep my complete set of Master of Kung Fu, because it took me several years in my 40s to acquire them all. And to be completely honest, this sense of aura, of the irrational, of the totemic, it takes on other forms for me as a collector as well. When I die, and I know this is morbid, but when I die, my daughter knows that she will cremate me, put me in a box, and stick me in a short box with my favorite comics. She's fine with that. She actually thinks it's kind of funny, and you know, there's a little bit of Mark Grunwald in that kind of reasoning. But she's been asking me for a list of which comics will go in that box with my ashes, and I'm having a hard time narrowing that down as well. It's going to be a short box. I don't want to take up too much space. I know there'll be Manhunter and some Legion issues, but what else makes a cut? What other comics do I want with me in my afterlife? So yes, this is a video about getting rid of comics, but getting rid of comics also involves the question of what comics are worth keeping. So I'll pose this question to you. If you had to winnow down your collection, say in half or a third of it, or even less, how would you decide what to keep and what to get rid of? What criteria would you use for letting something go or keeping it? If you decide you're going to be buried with your comics, how are you going to choose that? And on that really weird note, I'm Ray Mescalado. Thank you for listening to me. Have a good day. Goodbye.